Hi, everybody. This is Adam Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology, and you're listening to December's horoscopes. And this is the horoscope for Taurus for the month of December 2018. You can check this out for your sun sign or rising sign. More and more I think about it as I've been doing these more actively in my career for about a year now. I am more and more convinced that your rising sign is really the way to go. Basic reason being that your rising sign is going to configure the chart in the same way by this kind of monthly horoscope astrology by sun sign or by rising sign. Your rising sign is going to configure with the way that your natal chart looks in a whole sign house system, which is where, in other words, the transits in the sky right now are going to be synced up with the way your birth chart looks. So the more and more I look at my own and other people's that I'm close with, the more I'm convinced that rising sign is really the way to go for these. But I think you can look at your sun sign as well. I'm less convinced more and more that the moon sign is accurate with these. But again, I'm learning more and more about the style of horoscopic prediction the more that I do them, which I've been doing for about a year and a half, but more seriously for like the last year. All right, so at any rate, Taurus, the month ahead for you is really concentrated across the Sagittarius-Pisces axis. So you're going to see transits landing in your 8th and 11th house pretty much all month long, with the exception of a couple of transits that I'll talk about. So what I'm going to do is just walk you through what, in general, you can think about with basically every major transit of the month happening in Sagittarius and Pisces. So let's go ahead and just show you what they are. On the first and second days of the month, for example, you're going to see the Sun and Mars making a square to one another. And then by December 7th, you're going to see the new moon falling in Sagittarius in the 8th house, and it'll make a square to Mars and Neptune in Pisces in the 11th house. So again, Sag Pisces. And then from there, you're going to jump forward a little bit before we see another big one about December 21st or so. There we go. About December 21st, thereabouts, you're going to see Mercury and Jupiter get together in Sagittarius, again in your 8th house. Not long after that, you'll see, go forward a little bit here. And there you're going to see around the 24th, you're going to see Mercury square Neptune. Again, Sagittarius to Pisces, same kind of stuff really all month long. So all month long, you got this lineup of planets going across the 8th and 11th house axis in your chart. Now, before I talk about that, I actually want to, so that's where I'm going to spend my time, is talking about Sag and Pisces in your 8th and 11th houses. But before that, the month really actually gets started on the very first of the month. You'll notice that, here we go. Venus is just into Scorpio right around the beginning of the month, and it's just finishing up with an opposition to Uranus in Aries, which happens on November 30th and December 1st. So that transit is also kind of toning the beginning of the month. You can think about changes or challenges in relationships, and if you employ people, employee dynamics, work dynamics in the 6th house. Sometimes 6/12 Venus-Uranus is disturbances in love or relationships, or significant changes or revolution or sort of upheaval, sometimes artistic or creative originality. It's a very powerful transit that's happening right at the end of November, kind of tones the beginning of the month. Now, beyond that, beyond the start of the month sort of being toned by that Venus-Uranus opposition for everybody, but in different places in everybody's charts, again, the major focus is 8th and 11th house. Now, I'm a Taurus rising, so this is like my own horoscope for the month, right? So one of the things that you can watch for, and I've been thinking about this for myself and just like, things that have been going on in my own life, is you can think the 8th house is traditionally associated with death and loss and difficulties and hardships, and also bad motives. And it was a house was associated with fear and anxiety, but it was also, interestingly, it was also associated with benefits and fortune and good things that came to people through difficult circumstances, especially the misfortunes of other people. For example, like death and inheritance, or other people, because they're in a difficult position, they may be in a position where they need to make a good deal. For example, when people have to foreclose on a house and it goes on the market and someone might get it for a really good deal. Well, it's someone else's misfortune, but it would happen to be your good fortune. That's an 8th house kind of situation. Meanwhile, the 11th house was traditionally the house of good spirit, of friends, of benefactors, allies, colleagues, groups of people, wishes and dreams for the future, social ambitions. So it's a very interesting situation where all month long you're thinking about the way in which you may be inheriting some kind of good fortune, or good things may be sort of coming to you this month, an abundance of good things, you might say, but maybe they're coming through somewhat difficult circumstances, or maybe they come alongside of difficult circumstances. For example, in my own life, I was just basically one of the great astrologers in the astrology world had a stroke, and I was actually going to visit him just hours after he had this stroke, and ended up in the hospital room with his wife right there as he's probably preparing to pass. He's still with us, and hopefully, I'd love it if he pulled through, but he has advanced cancer, and the doctors were saying it doesn't look very good. This is an 8th house situation, right? A death. Well, last month, remember, Jupiter entered your 8th house, introducing big 8th house themes. Well, I was looking at this from my own horoscope. I wrote my own horoscope, and then later in the month, a famous astrology teacher that I've gone out and visited before is basically about to pass. However, before he passed, he asked if I would come out and visit with him, and said, he wanted to, basically when I got there and he had this stroke, his wife said, well, he had wanted to kind of maybe have you take care of some of his remaining work before he helping his remaining work get out in the world, because he knew he was probably dying. That's an 8th house, 11th house kind of situation, where it's like a weird, here's an astrological hero of mine who me and some other people were sort of, maybe inheriting something of his work and helping put it out to the world, to the larger community and groups that we belong to, 11th house, right? But it kind of is something, it's bittersweet because he's passing, you know what I mean? So that's an 8th house, 11th house kind of story. I don't always share personal stories, but I thought for Tauruses this month, you might, the vibe of that story that I just shared, this is the kind of thing that happens between 8th and 11th house when they're both activated. So you're also thinking, but sometimes it's not so nice, right? It can be about friends or groups of people who have bad motives, and you're trying to extricate yourself from different kinds of social ladder climbing. So be very careful about sort of trying to climb up, make an impression, achieve something, in a group setting through ways that are maybe a little Machiavellian, right? Just not so pure. On the other hand, facing fears, finding groups or colleagues or allies in the midst of turbulent times, dealing with transformation, loss, and change, 8th house, and actually finding some new sense of vision or ambition that comes out of it. But it's, the 8th house and the 11th house is mixed. 11th house, again, a lot of friends, groups, colleagues, allies, vision and progress for the future kind of themes in the 11th house, was traditionally called the joy of Jupiter and the house of good spirit. And the 8th house is, of course, called the idle place in the gate of Hades. So when you mix the two together, it's a bit like going to hell as you're also visioning about the heaven that you want to go to next. It's a really mixed bag. So check that out this month. All right. So let's talk about some of the other transits that are happening. One transit that's happening is a little different, from the rest is, let's see here. On December 20th, the sun in Sagittarius will trine Uranus in Aries from the 8th to 12th house. Be careful of impulsive decisions that seem like a really great idea, but maybe are a little nefarious around this time. This is a rebellious transit in the 12th house, so you've got to be careful of undoing yourself or of being a little too impulsive about something. But on the other hand, if it's time to break free from something that's unhealthy or toxic, really good moment to do it around December 20th. Then the other two big transits of the month are, of course, the entrance of the sun into Capricorn on the winter solstice, December 21st and the 22nd, and the full moon in Cancer on December 22nd, lighting up your 3rd and 9th house axis, which are the houses of the mind, the intellect, learning, faith, spirituality, travel. Eclipse is about to start falling in this house starting next month. So winter solstice and full moon on the December 21st and 22nd dates is foreshadowing eclipses that are about to happen in this house. You're about to go through a year and a half worth of growth and revolution in terms of the mind, faith, learning, travel, and also maybe the topics of siblings could come in the 3rd house, or brethren or kin, cousins, people that are like siblings to you. A lot of changes that are going to happen in this area. We'll take a look at that more in depth next month when we look at the eclipses. So that's what I've got for you this month, Taurus. I hope that this was interesting, and please leave your comments and let me know how things go. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. I'll see you in January. Bye.